A single headline slams onto the screen, glowing crimson against absolute darkness. The case stayed cold for 30 years. The words just sit there staring right back at you. Then another line, smaller but just as icy. DNA finally broke the silence. The sharp shhh of a morgue drawer sliding open slices through the quiet. Inside rests a body stiff, preserved, sealed in plastic. A face locked in sheer horror, eyes stretched wide, lips parted just a little. The skin's got that waxy gray look. Time didn't miss a beat with this one. The camera locks onto one tiny detail, a wedding band slightly loose on a bony finger. No name, no tag, just another piece of evidence tucked away in the dark. Marcus Reed here. Spent 7 straight years deep inside cold case squads across the UK, digging through ancient files and dusty archives like some kind of detective archaeologist. What you're about to see? That's the stuff the news never bothered to tell you. This video walks you through how a frozen body in a city of 8 million became the missing link in a nightmare that haunted a whole town for 3 decades. You'll meet the sister who never gave up hope. And yeah, you'll watch the exact second science finally had its say when no one else would listen. A quick disclaimer pops up in crisp white lettering on a blood-red backdrop. Pseudonyms used for privacy. Names, locations, and identifying details altered to protect identities. The screen dissolves into black. Source: The Guardian, 2023. A body frozen solid for years. A sister whose DNA cracked the code. A case that flat-out refused to stay buried. Back in January 2022, forensic teams in London made a find that would flip a family's world upside down and yank open a scar that had been festering for 30 years. They found a body, not just any body, one that had been locked in ice, frozen in time, untouched by rot, untouched by the world. Forensic tests didn't just confirm it was a corpse. It was a match. Source: BBC News, 2023. The breakthrough: mitochondrial DNA. While regular DNA breaks down over time, mitochondrial DNA gets passed straight from mother to child like a genetic heirloom. It's basically a time capsule. And in this mess, it was the only voice left that could still talk. When scientists pulled genetic material from those frozen remains, they didn't just ID a body. They tied it to a family that had spent 30 years chasing ghosts. Source: Metropolitan Police, 2023. On January 14, 2023, the Met confirmed the case was officially back on the table. The reason? Fresh science. A genetic link, a whisper from the past, finally loud enough to hear. Source: Nature Scientific Reports, 2022. A study published in Nature later proved just how powerful mitochondrial DNA can be when cracking cases decades old. Even when nuclear DNA is toast, when flesh has turned to dust, and bones have crumbled, mitochondrial DNA holds strong. It's a lifeline to the living, a shout from the dead. The screen snaps back to life, a small town draped in winter's harsh glow. Snow clings to rooftops of row houses, their chimneys coughing thin smoke trails. A street sign reads Wellington Road, but the numbers are smudged beyond recognition. A woman stands on the sidewalk, arms wrapped tight around herself against the cold. Her coat's seen better days, cuffs frayed at the edges. She stares at a house across the street, dark, empty, boarded up tight. Yellowed police tape sags from the doorframe, weather-beaten after months of rain. Her name never shows up on screen. Let's just call her Claire. Her breath hangs in the air, thick and slow, like she's been holding it since 1993. Claire never quit waiting. Every birthday, every holiday, every anniversary, she lit a candle. She prayed, she hoped, but hope's a brittle thing when nobody's listening. He's still out there. She muttered it to a neighbor once. The neighbor just nodded, patted her shoulder, and walked off without a word. But Claire knew. She felt it in her bones. Her brother, let's call him Daniel, vanished in the dead of winter. That's all anyone ever wrote down. No body, no ransom note, no crime scene tape. Just an empty house, a half-finished cup of tea on the counter, and a life that just stopped. A yellowed newspaper clipping slides into view, dated February 1993. The headline screams: "Local man vanishes without a trace." Underneath, a photo of a young guy with messy hair, grinning at the camera. Denim jacket leaning on some fence. That fence is gone now. The jacket's gone. The guy, long gone. The article mentions witnesses who last saw him near the train station. But nobody saw him get on a train. Nobody saw him buy a ticket. Nobody saw him leave, period. Claire snipped it out and kept it in a shoebox. She read it every year on the anniversary. February 14th. Valentine's Day. The cruelest joke nature ever played, the police file shut down in weeks. No foul play suspected. Probably just wandered off. Possible suicide. But Claire never bought any of it. Suicide? Daniel lived for music, baked fresh bread every Saturday, wrote crummy poetry and read it to his cat. He'd never leave without a word. Never. She tore the city apart looking for him. Posted flyers in every shop window, called every hospital, filed missing person reports that went straight to the shredder. Each year the file gathered dust. Each year her hope got thinner, until now, until a frozen body in a flat, until mitochondrial DNA, until a sister's blood finally doing the talking for a brother who couldn't talk anymore. Claire's fingers shake as she peels open an envelope, her name scribbled on the front in ink that's faded to near nothing. Inside, a single sheet from the police. "We regret to inform you." She doesn't finish reading. She already knows the body, the match, the truth. Tears hit the paper before she can stop them. Not grief, not yet. Relief, terror. 30 years of silence finally cracked open. But the letter doesn't say it all. It doesn't say how he died. It doesn't say why he ended up in that flat, frozen like leftovers forgotten in the freezer. It doesn't say who put him there. And that's the silence that still won't quit. The case stayed cold for 30 years, but DNA doesn't forget, and neither do the families. The game just changed. Now the hunt's back on. A forensic scientist walks into a stark, white-tiled lab while the hum of a high-throughput sequencer fills the background. "We're looking at mitochondrial DNA," she says, her voice steady. Mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, hangs out in the powerhouses of every cell, separate from the nuclear genome. Unlike nuclear DNA, which reshuffles each generation, mtDNA is passed down almost unchanged from mother to child. That maternal line leaves a genetic fingerprint that can linger long after nuclear markers have broken down. Source: nature. The scientist pulls a sealed tube from a freezer. Inside, a fragment of frozen tissue, tiny, translucent, preserved for decades. Even after 30 years of cold storage, the mitochondrial genome remains remarkably intact, she explains. Step 1. Extraction. The tissue is pulverized under liquid nitrogen, then dunked in a lysis buffer that frees DNA while shielding it from contaminants. Magnetic beads then snag the mitochondrial strands, pulling them out of the cellular debris soup. The process runs automatically, yet each cycle is checked for yield and purity. Source: nature. Step 2. Amplification. Using polymerase chain reaction, PCR, the lab zeroes in on hypervariable regions, short mtDNA stretches that differ between unrelated families but stay constant within a maternal line. Those regions, called HVR1 and HVR2, are amplified millions of times, generating enough material for sequencing. Step 3. Sequencing. A next-generation sequencer reads each amplified fragment, turning the string of nucleotides into a digital profile. Software then filters out errors by comparing each read against a reference mitochondrial genome. The outcome is a consensus sequence that stands in for the unknown individual's maternal DNA. Source: nature. Step 4. Database comparison. The fresh profile is uploaded into a secure police database, where it can be matched against samples already collected from living relatives. In this case, investigators had earlier taken a cheek swab from a woman who said she was the missing person's sister. Her sample had been kept under the same chain of custody standards. The software lines up the two sequences, hunting for matching mutations in the hypervariable regions. Because mtDNA shifts only through rare random mutations, a near-exact match across both HVR1 and HVR2 points to a shared maternal ancestor. "We observed a 99.9% concordance, the scientist says, which is well within the threshold for a definitive identification. Source: BBC. The match does more than confirm a name. It revives a case that had sat silent for 3 decades. The Metropolitan Police logged the discovery as new scientific evidence that forged a direct genetic link to the missing individual, prompting the case to be officially reopened. Source: Met Police. Why does mtDNA survive where nuclear DNA does not? The answer lies in copy number and cellular location. Each cell houses hundreds to thousands of mitochondria, each with its own genome, providing built-in redundancy. Moreover, mitochondria are wrapped in a double membrane that shields their DNA from enzymatic decay. Even when tissue is frozen, the low temperature slows chemical reactions, preserving the mitochondrial strands. Source: Nature. The forensic team also ran a control test. They extracted mtDNA from a recent, unrelated sample processed in the same batch. That control showed the expected level of background noise, confirming the match wasn't a lab artifact. With the genetic link confirmed, investigators could finally attach a name to the anonymous remains. The sisters' testimony, combined with the mitochondrial match, gave prosecutors a solid foundation for further inquiry, pinpointing the victim's last known whereabouts, potential witnesses, and possible motives. Source: Guardian. The forensic narrative continues beyond the lab bench. Once a match is established, the case file is updated and detectives are notified. They revisit old interview transcripts, re-examine missing person reports, and cross-reference the newly identified individual against other cold case databases. The scientific breakthrough becomes the catalyst for a renewed investigative strategy. In practical terms, the mitochondrial analysis cost a fraction of whole genome sequencing, yet delivered a decisive answer. The technique sidesteps the problem of degraded nuclear DNA, which often fragments beyond recognition after decades of exposure. By focusing on the resilient maternal genome, investigators bypass the need for high-quality nuclear material altogether. Source: Nature. The scientist concludes, mitochondrial DNA doesn't just tell us who someone was, it tells us who they were related to, and that relationship can survive the longest of cold cases. Her words echo in the lab, a reminder that even the quietest genetic whispers can break a 30-year silence. The next segment will follow the detectives as they turn this genetic confirmation into courtroom evidence. But for now, the lab's quiet hum marks a turning point. A frozen fragment, a maternal signature, and a case finally thawed. Source: BBC. The phone jolted the hush of the kitchen, its ringtone slicing the silence like a blade. "Hello," a jittery voice replied, barely holding steady. On the other line, Dr. Alina Marquez, chief forensic geneticist, pressed the handset to her ear, breathing shallow. She'd spent months coaxing a fragile strand of mitochondrial DNA from a body frozen for 30 years, and now the results finally matched a living relative. "Miss Henderson," she started, choosing each word carefully, pausing intentionally. "I'm calling from the Metropolitan Police's forensic unit." A chill ran through the room. The family matriarch, clutching a faded photo, felt the weight of a secret finally rising to the surface. "The scientists have finished their analysis," Alina said, her voice trembling with anticipation. "We have a genetic revelation. The remains we identified are your long-lost relative." Silence stretched, then cracked. A sob rose from a corner, then another, followed by a chorus of tears that seemed to have been waiting for this exact moment. The proof wasn't a photograph or a facial reconstruction, but a strand of mitochondrial DNA that passes unchanged from mother to child. That tiny molecule tied the frozen body to the sister who never stopped hoping. Source: BBC. Mitochondrial DNA evidence reopens 1990s missing person case. "This is the same mitochondrial sequence we found in your sister's blood sample," Alina explained, softening her tone. "Mitochondrial DNA is passed down unchanged, so the match is unequivocal." The family huddled around a laptop, the screen flashing the lab's report. The words "direct genetic link" stared back, stamped by the Metropolitan Police as the official basis for reopening the case. Source: Met Police Disclosure Log, January 2023. It's you," whispered the eldest son, eyes glued to the document. "All these years you were here." For the scientists, the breakthrough capped a method outlined in a peer-reviewed study that showed mitochondrial DNA can crack cold cases even when nuclear DNA is degraded. Source: Nature article on mitochondrial DNA analysis. "We pulled what we could from the remains," Alina said, recalling the painstaking process. Even though the nuclear genome was fragmented, the mitochondrial genome survived the cold, letting us compare it with your sister's sample. The family's grief shifted, turning into a strange relief. The unknown no longer gnawed at the edges of memory. It had been named, identified, and returned to them. "After 30 years of silence," the mother whispered, We finally have a name. The scientist's voice softened even more. The case was reopened after new scientific evidence emerged, and that evidence is the match you're hearing about now. Source: Guardian missing persons case reopened after frozen body found in London. A wave of gratitude surged through the room, mixing with lingering sorrow. The family embraced, each hug a silent thank you to the unseen hands that coaxed a single molecule from the past. In that instant, the story of a missing person shifted from a cold file on a desk to a living narrative, anchored by DNA and carried forward by love. "Thank you," the sister said, tears still streaming, "for bringing him home." Dr. Marquez listened, the tremor in her voice now a blend of professional pride and deep empathy. "It's our honor to give you this closure," she replied. "Science can't erase the years, but it can light the path forward." The call ended, yet the echo of those words lingered. The family, once suspended in uncertainty, now held a tangible piece of their past, a genetic fingerprint that bridged 3 decades of loss. And in the quiet that followed, the kitchen lights flickered, casting soft shadows that seemed to dance around a photograph finally placed beside the laptop. A reminder that even the coldest cases can thaw when DNA whispers the truth. That frozen set of remains, once just another cold case file, suddenly cracked open when mitochondrial DNA linked it straight to a missing man's sister. And just like that, the whole playbook for cold case detectives got flipped upside down. Turns out that tiny strand of maternal DNA can stick around for decades, even when everything else has turned to mush, giving investigators a fighting chance where fingerprints and hair samples would have called it quits long ago. Now, forensic teams all over Europe are rushing back to their old case files, convinced that the same trick used in London could pull other lost names out of the dark. No need to chase down nuclear DNA anymore. Mitochondrial just slides right into place, even when the sample's seen better days. Source: Nature. Take London, for instance. Those scientists pulled mitochondrial DNA from a corpse frozen solid, and bam, matched it to a living relative, enough to make the Met reopen the case on January 14, 2023. Source: Police report. One little genetic match, and suddenly a 30-year dead end had a fresh lead, proving that new scientific evidence can wake up even the dustiest files. Over in the U.S., prosecutors are already pushing for laws that pump serious cash into advanced DNA labs, arguing that the price of one life saved, or one family given answers, dwarfs the cost of clinging to outdated science. And yeah, the ripple's already spreading. Labs are training analysts in mitochondrial sequencing, and courtrooms are citing the London case left and right. Source: BBC. But here's the catch: science doesn't just happen on its own. This whole breakthrough only keeps moving because people like you keep pushing for it. Whether that's donating to research, calling up your rep, or just spreading the word so these cases don't fade into the background. If a cold case keeps you up at night, there's a way to help. Fight for laws that fund modern labs and make sure those victims aren't just another forgotten name. So here's the deal. Hit the link in the description to toss a few bucks to the nonprofit sending DNA kits to cash-strapped departments, and smash that subscribe button if you want more deep dives on how science flips the script on history. Every click, every share, every dollar, it all adds up to the next breakthrough that could turn another dead file into a story with an ending. And hey, when the lab finally drops its results, that's when the silence breaks. So as we wrap this up, lock this in: when science speaks, silence breaks. Source: The Guardian.